The Stone Zone, with legendary Republican strategist and political icon and pundit Roger Stone. Stone has served as a senior campaign aide to 3 Republican presidents. He is a New York Times best-selling author and a longtime friend and advisor of President Donald Trump. As an outspoken libertarian, Stone has appeared on thousands of broadcasts, spoken at countless venues, and lectured before the prestigious Oxford Political Union and the Cambridge Union Society. Due to his 4+ decades in the political and cultural arena, Stone has become a pop culture icon. And now, here's your host, Roger Stone.
Welcome. It is Inauguration Day, the day we begin to make America great again. As you can see, I am dressed in full morning attire, which the etiquette books say is the correct outfit for a presidential inauguration. Tonight, I will be wearing white tie, which is, again, the appropriate dress for the inaugural ball. A lot of news here. First of all, let me predict with confidence that President Donald Trump will pardon Ross Ulbricht, the IT pioneer who invented the dark web. Now, Ross Ulbricht committed no crimes on the dark web, while some may have sold drugs or guns on the on the dark web. That wasn't Ross Ulbricht, and those people were never prosecuted. This would be like prosecuting Alexander Graham Bell for inventing the telephone because some drug dealer later did a drug deal on the phone. I'm confident that justice for Ross Ulbricht is coming. At the same time, I believe that there will also be clemency for the January 6th detainees. These people have been kept, in many cases, in the most inhumane conditions imaginable. The U.S. government in the D.C. Gulag acting in violation of the Geneva Conventions, meaning we are treating American citizens, many of them convicted of non-violent offenses, far worse than we treat international terrorists. I also have to commend President Joe Biden for his pardon of the early civil rights leader, Marcus Garvey. I began advocating a pardon for Garvey as early as 2017 when I wrote President Trump a letter. I'm confident that Trump would have pardoned Garvey, who was railroaded by the FBI back in the 20s, had he had the opportunity. But kudos to Joe Biden in this case for doing the right thing. When it comes to pardons, however, the pardon of Dr. Fauci is interesting. If Anthony Fauci did nothing wrong, well, why would he need a pardon? He could be the greatest mass murderer in world history. Remains to be seen. Also repugnant is the pardon of Mark Milley, the general, who you may recall called the Chinese to assure them that if the United States launched an attack on them, that he would let them know in advance. I think that's called treason. Other members of the January 6th committee have been pardoned. Why would Liz Cheney need a pardon if she had done nothing wrong, other than suborning perjury, circumventing witness lawyers, destroying evidence, and far worse? Today, we embark, however, on what will be a golden age. Call it the age of Trump, an unprecedented age of peace, prosperity, security, and justice. Yes, I will be there as the president is sworn in. And this could be, other than the day I married my wife, the single greatest day of my life. Now, to help me break down what's going on in Washington and around the world, my co-host, the editor-in-chief of Slingshot.news, who has his own show here at Worldview Tube, my good friend, Troy Smith.
Roger, as always, an honor to be with you here in the Stone Zone. I want to say, there's been a few times early in this year where you've complimented me on my tie, and the reason that means so much to me is because you are known as a style icon. I think it's safe to say, and to join you here. You look so dapper in your morning dress, Roger. Very happy to see it. And I wonder, I actually know you're going to be the only person in Washington, D.C. appropriately dressed for this inauguration. You've seen it time and time again, Roger. I think the people at home want to know, when you woke up this morning, what was the first thing on your mind on this historic day, having seen so much of America's renaissance throughout your life? As you said, the happiest day of your life, barring your wedding day. It had to be a special thing just to even wake up on this historic day.
Well, Troy, I guess the answer is that America came this close to total destruction. Joe Biden did his very best to destroy everything about America, and opening our borders, essentially inviting more than 20 million illegals, including terrorists and criminals, into our country. Had Kamala Harris been elected, between her wage and price controls, you may remember those, we tried those before, they didn't work, and her energy policies, not to mention her open borders policies, I really think it was the end for America. But Trump's victory is more than just a political victory in a presidential campaign. It is a testimony to his resilience, to his persistence, to his grit, to his courage, yes, and to his vision for a truly great America. We came this close to the precipice of complete and total disaster. It is only through the perseverance of Donald Trump, who is the ultimate fighter, the ultimate warrior, that America will be saved. I was with the president last night. He gave extraordinary remarks about the revival that America is about to undertake. So it is a very happy day for the Stone family. It is a very happy day for America. And yes, you're right about my outfit. You know, it's interesting. Every president in modern times wore a morning suit. We're talking about JFK, who even wore the top hat. Harry Truman, of course, Dwight Eisenhower, Ronald Reagan. It's interesting. Jimmy Carter did not wear it for his inauguration, but at Reagan's request, he wore it when he was present at Reagan's inauguration. Reagan also wore a morning suit. Then George H.W. Bush, a man who screwed up many things, came along and screwed up this great tradition by wearing a dark blue suit. From that point on, of course, the tradition was gone. But I will be honoring the tradition today. Of that, you can be sure.
Well, Roger, I know that you're doing so many events, and I do want to, ask you to tell people, if they are near Washington, D.C., or they have tickets to the events, where they can see you speak, because I know you have some events lined up there in D.C. But I saw on Instagram and also on Twitter that you met Argentinian President Javier Milei in Washington, D.C. yesterday. We have the pictures that we can put up to show that historic meeting. I know that the election of Milei was such a big moment for you, Roger. I know that you have been a proponent of liberty in South and Central America for so many decades now. What was this like to meet somebody who you've described here on the StoneZONE as one of your heroes?
That's exactly the point, Troy. You know, it is very rare that a person gets to meet their heroes in life. But as I think about it, I have met all of my heroes. I met and worked for Richard Nixon. He was one of my heroes. I met and worked for Ronald Reagan. He was one of my heroes. I met and worked with Donald Trump. He is one of my heroes. And now I have met the Lion, a man who is proving, even as we speak, that capitalism works and that communism and socialism do not work and have never worked and never will work. I had a warm greeting from the president of Argentina last night. There's a great video of that. We'll probably play it tomorrow. But it was a great honor to meet him and to see that he's a living example for everyone in Latin America, that socialism cannot work, will not work. And it's very, very much like, well, when Donald Trump was elected. You remember, Troy? Oh, if Trump is elected, the stock market will crash. If Trump is elected, we'll have a depression. If Trump is elected, he will start World War III. How'd that work out? We had a boom and robust economy. unemployment levels at the lowest point in American history up to that time among all Americans, Black, white, Hispanic, young, old, urban, rural. We had a record stock market, as I say. He started no new wars, but he did bring tens of thousands of our troops back from the Middle East without the countries they were being removed from collapsing in chaos behind them, as Joe Biden did in Afghanistan. So I must say that meeting President Milley, who cordially invited me to visit him in Argentina, was one of the absolute high points of this entire group.
Well, and Roger, we do have that video actually for people to see today. So we'll play that and let people see that. Let's roll it.
Cuánta banda vi por el camino, cuántos talentos perdidos en una feria de sueños. Está muy caro los precios a seguir creyendo.
It was a historic moment. I want to thank Santiago Caputo and others who worked for the president for helping set that up. I've looked for it for a long time. As you know, President Milley invited me to his inauguration, but the U.S. State Department seems to have lost my passport application at that time. Now it has been restored, and I look forward to meeting him in Argentina.
Well, Roger, you mentioned in your opening, which I was listening to here in the wings, waiting to come on, and you mentioned the pardon of Marcus Garvey. It's something that I know you've been a supporter of for so many years, dating back really to President Trump's first term, and even before that. We have a video of a senator here, Adam Schiff, talking about not only the pardons of Marcus Garvey, but really attacking nominees, and it also issuing this strange statement about Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, and so much more. I want to get your thoughts on this because really what I think this is a disguised attack on Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, and so many others. And on a historic day, a day where Americans have sent President Trump and Republican majorities to the House and the Senate, Washington, D.C., to create a new era, a golden era. We have people who have been, leaders of the destruction of this country, like Adam Schiff, on air, trashing the nominees, really digging in their heels, trying to stop Americans from having the representation that they just elected in Washington, D.C. Let's roll this clip of Adam Schiff and get your thoughts on this historic day of this unprecedented attack by this pencil-neck senator.
Schiff, with you responding to what you just heard there.
Well, let me just say, with respect to some of the nominees like Kash Patel, this is someone, in my view, who is not qualified to be FBI director, and someone who claimed, for example, that he wanted to shut down FBI headquarters early in his tenure and open a museum to the deep state. So this is a conspiracy theorist. It's also someone, I think, who demonstrated, sadly, a principle of the first Trump administration, and that is you rise to the level of your sycophancy, and the bigger the sycophant, the higher you rise. He's risen pretty high, but that's not what we're looking for.
How about the question about the January 6th pardons?
Greatly concerned about it. First of all, that he could pardon people that beat police officers, gouged them, bear sprayed them, but also, even beyond that, just the general message it would send, George, that his first pardons are going to go to people who sought, through the use of violence at the Capitol, to stop the peaceful transfer of power, that played some role in that. Really, that's who he wants to pardon. The American people, I think, voted for him in part because they wanted something done about crime, not because they wanted to see him pardon criminals attacking the government. They want something done about fentanyl. They want something done about California smash-and-grab robberies. This is not what they had in mind, not political revenge, not rewarding people who participated in an insurrection to stop the transfer of power.
The president-elect has also talked about prosecuting members of the January 6th committee like you. I know you said you don't want a preemptive pardon from President Biden. Is that because you think the Trump administration will not actually prosecute?
I don't know what the Trump administration will do, but it's for a couple of reasons. First, those of us on the committee are very proud of the work we did. We were doing vital, quintessential oversight of a violent attack on the Capitol. But so I think it's unnecessary. But second, the precedent of giving blanket pardons, preemptive blanket pardons on the way out of an administration, I think is a precedent we don't want to set.
And you've communicated that to the president, President Biden?
Communicated it both publicly and privately to the administration.
Wow, there's a lot to break down there. First of all, the idea of Adam Schiff, a man who said that he had seen more than circumstantial evidence of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. Calling anybody else a conspiracy theorist is an outrage. No, Adam, sorry. The idea that Paul Manafort, a high-level Trump campaign official, gave polling information to a Russian intelligence asset is a lie. You can repeat it as many times as you want, but the man he gave publicly available polling information to, Konstantin Kilimnik, is a U.S. intelligence asset, and you know it. Secondarily, the Biden administration Department of Justice Inspector General only 10 days ago issued a report in which he said that you and your sidekick, Eric Swalwell, leaked classified information to members of the media. So if no person is above the law, why, Adam, should you not be prosecuted? Listen, Watermelon Head, we both know that the January 6th committee investigation was a hoax. Your beloved colleague, Liz Cheney, suborned perjury. She circumvented the attorney for witness Cassidy Hutchinson, and she coached her to say things that were perjurous. Why should Liz Cheney at a minimum not be disbarred and as a maximum not be prosecuted? Also, Adam, why did you destroy all of the evidence? I was watching the other day on the internet. The only guy who I think engaged in Russian collusion was you when two disc jockeys called you pretending to be Russians, claiming to have naked pictures of Donald Trump, and you were all ears. Literally, the single greatest scumbag in the United States Senate, a man devoid of any integrity whatsoever, and a man who right now is quaking in his boots because he knows Kash Patel has absolute evidence of his multiple crimes, is against preemptive pardons, unless, of course, they're for Dr. Fauci or for General Mark Milley or for his co-conspirators in the January 6th investigation. It's not going to be a good 6 years for Adam Schiff.
Well, and Roger, you know, we have so much more to get to today, but I just wanted to get that out of the way because Adam Schiff is one of these senators who is digging in his heels. And we see on this historic day, as I just stated, we had a mandate in November. Millions of Americans elected Trump, not just by the Electoral College, but by the popular vote as well. They elected Republican majorities in the House and Senate. So for people like Adam Schiff to be sitting there and over, you know, you want to talk about not qualified. What has Adam Schiff ever accomplished in his life other than being a government official? I mean, this guy has done nothing but corrupt, steal, and lie. And it's an example in Washington, D.C. You know, Roger, there's a lot of hatred on the right, and I think justly, for President Biden and the way he's conducted himself over the last 4 years, targeting Americans, jailing Americans over January 6th, you know, and all these things. We had news this morning that President Biden will ride with President Trump in a limousine to the Capitol for the inauguration. We have footage of President Trump arriving at the White House this morning for a tea time before the inauguration. So let's roll that clip and then get your thoughts on President Biden riding with Trump to the Capitol. Is this breaking precedent? Is this signaling unity? What is this? Let's roll it.
Troy, a couple of observations there. First of all, that picture of the four of them included someone who was noted on my international best dressed list, Melania Trump, and someone who was noted on my international worst dressed list, Jill Biden. But no, actually, there is a great tradition that's only recently been broken. General and President Dwight Eisenhower, who did not have the highest regard for President Kennedy, who he thought was too inexperienced to be president, but rode to the inaugural with his successor. By the way, they both wore top hats for that ride. And I think we both understand that Joe Biden is far, far happier with the election of Donald Trump than he would have been with the election of Kamala Harris, because he knows, as the American people now know, that he was forced out of this race by Barack Obama. And he has been, I must say, most gracious since Trump's election. And again, as I said early in the show, I give him kudos, true credit for having the courage to pardon Marcus Garvey, the early civil rights leader who was railroaded by the FBI because he was preaching Black nationalism, Black responsibility. He was preaching to Black Americans education, self-reliance, self-responsibility, and yes, a free enterprise. This is something I wanted President Trump to do. I think he would have done it in his next term, but Joe Biden has acted preemptively. And for that, we owe a gratitude to Joe Biden. I've written a lot about this. It's something I feel very strongly about. So again, I give credit to Biden. I think Joe and Jill Biden have been very gracious today. And I think they are much happier with this election result. Now, Biden said roughly 10 days ago that he would have beaten Donald Trump. I don't think so. But it does demonstrate the deep cleavages that continue in the Democrat Party. I understand Michelle Obama will not be in town today. I predict to you once again that she will be a candidate for president, however, in 4 years when she and Barry try to take it all back.
Well, and Roger, I talked about that subject on my show as well. And I think, when we got to the precipice here in the 2024 election with just a few months to go, I believe that there was an effort to draft Michelle Obama. We talked about this on the show, but if you're Michelle Obama, why go against the human wrecking ball that is Donald Trump in an electoral cycle where he's shown to be very effective against candidates when in 2028, you're going to have a very different situation. One of the things that we've seen, on the opposite side of Biden and Jill Biden's gracious attitudes towards the Trumps in these last couple of weeks is the really, I would say, uncouth, maybe, it's just inappropriate behavior of Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris. She refused to give J.D. Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance, a tour of the occupancy for the vice president. And that's kind of an unprecedented thing. And we have footage of Vice President nominee Vance arriving this morning at the White House to meet with Kamala Harris. I want to get your thoughts, Roger. Is Kamala going to fade off into the distance? Is she so egotistical that after this reeling election loss, she believes she still has stock politically, nationally? Just want to get your thoughts on Kamala Harris's future. Let's roll this clip. Looks like there's a little bit of attention.
Troy, a couple points. First of all, it's very clear that J.D. Vance's wife will be a nominee for my international best dressed list next year. But additionally, an excellent piece in the Wall Street Journal just days ago by Ken Kachigian, who was a senior speechwriter and strategist for both Presidents Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, speculating about the fact that Kamala Harris may be thinking about running for governor of California in a effort to keep her presidential prospects alive. In fact, the latest polls in California show that 78% of California Democrats would have Kamala Harris as their first choice for governor. The problem with that is Richard Nixon learned in 1962. Remember, he lost a razor-thin margin to John Kennedy in 1960. And then party leaders like President Dwight Eisenhower and Governor Tom Dewey, who had been the Republican nominee in 1944 and 1948, prevailed upon him to run for governor of California to keep his prospects for the 1964 presidential nomination alive. The problem with this is, and Nixon wrote much about this, he had no interest in state issues, no interest and no background. His interest was in federal issues, particularly international issues, foreign affair issues. And every single day of that campaign, he was faced by the same question by hostile reporters like Dick Bergholtz of the LA Times and others who said, hey, Nixon, isn't this just a stepping stone to run for president again? Now, ironically, Troy, running for governor of California and losing preserved Nixon's political future because he ran and lost prior to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Once Lyndon Johnson became president on November 22nd, 1963, and by the way, that famous picture you see of him being sworn in, completely unnecessary. He was automatically president. That was done to twist the knife in Robert Kennedy. There's the photo. It was very clear that no Republican was going to beat Lyndon Johnson in 1964. And Nixon's defeat in 1962 kept him from being the 1964 nominee, which kept him alive. And then the murder of Kennedy, the murder of Senator Robert Kennedy, the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King, and the very divisive Vietnam War parted the seas politically in a way that Nixon was able to make the greatest single political comeback in American history up until the time that, well, yes, even Donald Trump transcended that. So Kamala Harris has to think long and hard about whether she wants to run for governor of California. Now, I don't think she's qualified to be president. I also don't think she's qualified to be governor. But having just run for president, her stock is very high among Democrats, and she would be the nominee of her party. The other piece of news, however, is that it's looking more and more like the landscape could really change in California. Rick Caruso, who ran a very strong campaign for mayor of Los Angeles, talking about mounting a recall, a Democrat, by the way, a good man, though, talking about mounting a recall of Gavin Newsom. Also, my good friend Grant Cardone talking about returning to California, his native state, to run for governor. I haven't had time to look at the demographic changes that these horrific fires may have caused in terms of shift in the electorate. You'd have to go look at where the fires were geographically. But I think it's a safe bet that between President Trump's very strong performance in California in the recent election, plus the anemic response to these wildfires, exacerbated by the woke policies of the Los Angeles Fire Department, who's been hiring firefighters not based on their qualifications, experience, or ability to fight fires, but on the basis of their sex and gender. is created a whole new dynamic. And then, of course, there is the woke policy of turning off the water so that a small fish that is near extinction doesn't become extinct, which I think impacts the life of, well, absolutely nobody on the planet. So California may now be in play for the Republicans. Kamala Harris may want to think twice about a race for governor, but I suspect that we have not heard the last of her.
Well, Roger, that was very interesting history, and I think it shows that you have this history in politics that is really unrivaled. It's why the Stone Zone is so valuable. And one of the things that we debunked here time and time again throughout the election was, I think, one of the most damaging, ridiculous lies that's ever been put out electorally, and that was a lie by former Trump Chief of Staff John Kelly that Trump had referred to veterans in a foreign cemetery in France as suckers and losers. And this was wrapped up in all, many other lies, Roger, that Trump had also said he didn't want to be pictured with disabled veterans, a lie that is disproven by literally thousands of pictures of Trump standing next to veterans with disabilities and horrible ailments from time in war. And we saw, we see constantly this lie debunked in Trump's actions. He's so generous with the military. He's always very kind to them. And there's obviously, even the infamous footage of him outside, the wind's blowing, and this poor Marine has his hat blown off. He stops and he picks up the hat. He puts it back on the Marine, even though it blows off. You see his kindness, his intent there. We saw President Trump yesterday visit Arlington National Cemetery. We have photos of the president-elect there that we can put up, just some striking images. He was there with vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance. And we also have a video of Melania Trump and First Lady Jill Biden attending and participating in a wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington. I want to get your thoughts on this tradition, the display of unity here, and the lies of John Kelly, and just how awful it is, because it's not, Roger, it's really the veterans that become the victims of John Kelly's vicious lies. Let's roll that clip and then get your thoughts.
People will not remember this, Troy, but after Operation Desert Storm, Donald Trump believed that the veterans of Desert Storm deserved a parade in New York City. The city government said they could not pay for such a parade, so he paid for it personally. There's never been a president who loves our men and women in uniform and supports them more strongly than President Donald Trump, just as he supports the men and women in local law enforcement. General John Kelly is a bitter little man, and he's also a liar. There were 21 people present when President Trump allegedly said that those veterans, those in military service who had given their lives for the country were suckers and losers. That's because he never said it. It is disgraceful. Talk to anyone in the military if you want to find out what they think about who has their back. Now, the DEI and mandatory vaccination policies of Joe Biden have decimated our military. We're not war ready, but I think we understand that Donald Trump is going to return America to the concept of peace through strength. In other words, the way to avoid war is to be strong as a deterrent. I had a great opportunity to talk to Pete Hegseth last night, very briefly. I'm growingly confident that he will be confirmed and that he is exactly the right man to make America's military war ready again in order to preserve the peace.
Well, Roger, there is a lot of heat coming on these nominees, and it's really coming from people like Adam Schiff, who aren't really interested in the question of, okay, is Pete Hegseth qualified for the job? Is Tulsi Gabbard qualified for the job? And even if he does examine that, he uses it as a political wedge and lies about the qualifications of all of these nominees who were extremely qualified, one, and two, very professionally able to get into these positions and really affect change. And I think that's ultimately what they fear, Roger, is change. And we see, it's interesting, the same people that objected and object to Trump's nominees are the same people who constantly attack people in the heart of this country for their Christianity. And there's a moment I wanted to play, and we can play these clips back to back. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump visited St. John's Church in Washington, D.C. just yesterday, or this morning, I'm sorry. And this was the church that Trump famously cleared rioters away from and was pictured holding the Bible. That picture became a viral flashpoint for both the left and the right, the left viewing it as a protest image and the right viewing it as an image of defiance. And I wanted to just play these clips and ask you, is this church significant to Trump? Because it seems to pop up again and again. I believe there's been a lot of presidents who have visited this church. So I want to get your thoughts on St. John's and the president making a visit here the day of his inauguration. Let's roll that.
Troy, I've known President Trump for 45 years, now 46 years. I attended Marble Collegiate Church on Fifth Avenue with President Trump for the funerals of both his mother and his father. And that's where he worshiped when he lived in New York. I do think St. John's has great significance for him. Here's the part people don't remember. It was virtually burned to the ground by Black Lives Matter protesters, a crime in which no one was prosecuted, no one whatsoever. But then January 6th is the worst attack on America since Pearl Harbor. Please give me a break. I will say this. I think having talked to the president after Butler, Pennsylvania, he has made a significant progress on his own personal faith journey. I think he realizes that his life was spared for a greater purpose by the Lord. I think he is serene now, confident about his own safety. And look, I have had some concerns about this. You'll remember right here on this show, weeks ago, I said that I wished he would not take the oath of office out in public on the portico with millions of people watching. But it seemed to me potentially, I'm hardly an expert, but potentially the victim of drones or some other assassination attempt. Now, You might say that makes you a conspiracy theorist, except for there have been 2 attempts on his life. So why would there not be a third? Yes, I think St. John's has special significance for him. And the fact that he went there early this morning to pray for wisdom shows you that he has really, I think, embraced his faith. Back in the 2016 campaign, back in the 2020 campaign, many pastors, many Christians would ask me why Trump didn't talk more about his faith. Well, I think he has always believed his faith is a private matter, not something to be politicized. But now that his life was spared by God Almighty in that horrific moment in Butler, Pennsylvania, I think that he is guided by the Lord. Many of my friends who are Christian prophets, like Amanda Grace and Robin Bullock and others, have said they really believe he is anointed for this moment. And I think they're right.
Well, Roger, there's another thing, there's so many things happening right now that are a culmination of your life's work. President Trump, you were among the first to advise him to run for president and to encourage that in 1988. You've talked about that many times here on the show and many other places. And we see the culmination of that in this final election of President Trump and inauguration today. We see the culmination of your work in promoting liberty and promoting capitalism in your meeting of Javier Milei from Argentina. And we are now, I believe, going to see the culmination and the vindication of your work as it pertains to the assassination of JFK and the truth behind what happened on that day. During his rally yesterday at Capital One Arena, President Trump announced that in just days, he will be releasing a trove of documents unveiling the truth about the JFK assassination. It would appear to me that these are the same documents that were encouraged by several others in the previous Trump administration for Trump to not release. Want to get your thoughts on that in this response. But President Trump announcing that all classified documents pertaining to the JFK assassination will be revealed just days after the shocking audio tape that we played here, confirming that Mac Wallace was the man behind the trigger. Let's play this video, and Roger, get your thoughts on this historic moment from Trump's Capital One Arena speech.
As a first step toward restoring transparency and accountability to government, we will also reverse the overclassification of government documents, and in the coming days, we are going to make public remaining records relating to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, as well as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and other topics of great public interest. It's all going to be released, Uncle Sam.
This is something I urged the president to do way back in 2017. He released about 80% of the documents pertaining to the Kennedy assassination that were still classified. We learned a number of things in those documents. We saw the 1099 issued from the FBI to Lee Harvey Oswald, which means, of course, when the government said they had no knowledge of him, he'd actually been on the FBI payroll. He was also, we saw records that proved that he had been trained to speak Russian at the CIA's language school in North Carolina. All of these things point in the same direction, which is to say Central Intelligence involvement in the murder of JFK, as my friend Robert Kennedy believes. So I'm still hopeful that the president will release all of the documents. There's only about 20% left that will prove conclusively that the U.S. government had a very substantial role in the murder of an American president. This just in, moments ago, we learned that President Joe Biden has pardoned his entire family. So that would be James Biden, Sarah Jones Biden, Valerie Biden Owens, John T. Owens, and Francis W. Biden. Now, Troy, if the Bidens did nothing wrong, why would they possibly need a pardon?
Well, Roger, this is breaking news. Obviously, we're just learning this in the coming minutes, but there has been investigations into the Bidens over the last few years by the House Intelligence Committee that have revealed that money went directly from China to the pockets of James Biden and others in the Biden family. And, Roger, when we examine Hunter Biden, just on its face, how absurd is it that Hunter Biden, with absolutely no experience in energy whatsoever, is serving on the board of a Ukrainian energy company? And then, of course, you have President Trump being impeached for allegedly withholding aid to Ukraine, when President Biden himself bragged in a video that went viral, it has gone viral many times now, that he withheld aid from Ukraine in order to get a prosecutor fired. Just so happens to be the same prosecutor that was investigating Burisma, the company in which Hunter Biden was serving on the board with zero experience. So the corruption of the Bidens has been so wide open, Roger, that it seems to me the only way that they could preserve themselves and their dignity is perhaps a blanket pardon for the entire family. Now, you are a bit of a historian yourself, Roger. Has any president ever pardoned their entire family before? And do you think this will set a precedent going forward where presidents will pardon their own families? It seems like this could be a dangerous precedent.
No, Troy, and I'll tell you, this is a nice opportunity because immediately after January 6th, I wrote a letter to the president urging him to pardon everybody in the Republican Party who had the audacity to question the results of the 2020 election, which of course any American has a First Amendment right to do. But I said that he should pardon every Republican member of the House, every Republican member of the Senate, every member of his staff, every one of his campaign surrogates, many of his most prominent supporters, like Rudy Giuliani, for example, who had the courage to question the outcome of the election. Sorry, but when more voters vote in Philadelphia than are registered to vote, that's indicative of a problem. And I accurately predicted that they would try to criminalize free speech, that if you question the election, that they would prosecute you for it. And of course, they did exactly that, prosecuting President Trump and a number of his supporters in Arizona, in Nevada, in Georgia, quite famously, and in Washington, D.C. So what did the headlines say? Roger Stone asks for a second pardon for himself due to his activities on January 6th. Yesterday, Denver Riggleman, a former Rhino congressman, and a guy who has defamed me multiple times, said yet again on MSNBC that I had some involvement in the crimes and illegal actions of January 6th. Let me say it one more time. Any claim that I knew in advance about, was involved in, or condoned any illegal action on January 6th or any other date is categorically false. Now, unfortunately, he wrote a book with these same fake claims, but the statute of limitations on defamation have run out. So I was looking through some old pictures today. I remember when this guy, whose name was Seth Abramson, a non-journalist hack blogger, said that my arrest was imminent after January 6th because I was the mastermind. That didn't age too well, did it, Seth?
Well, Roger, there's a whole swath of people in the mainstream media who have lied about you ad nauseum and really use you for clickbait. And we've seen this throughout the last few months in the campaign where you were illegally recorded several times. And not only that, but had the audio of you manipulated by the January 6th committee and others with AI software. I think that this is an opportunity really to get into the heart of this matter, which is federal prosecution. And you've been subject to that federal prosecution. So I'd like to ask you, what's it like to be the subject of DOJ persecution? Because these are people with basically limitless ability to flaunt the law, to break the law in certain instances and get away with it. And they also have a limitless bank account. If the Bidens are good enough to be subject to, to be spared subject to investigation by federal authorities. I think that speaks to the broader reforms that the American people sent Trump to Washington in order to enact. We'd like to see the power of these federal prosecutors lessen. We don't want to see people like Andrew Weissman able to destroy lives like they have in the past. Can you talk about that real quickly?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's why Trump's victory is more than just a political victory in a presidential campaign. He had to overcome a veritable tsunami of lawfare. Met with some guys yesterday working on a book and a documentary on Andrew Weissman, the single most corrupt prosecutor in American history. It starts with his cover up of mob murders and his perjury on the stand regarding who was and was not an FBI informant. Then there is his destruction of the Enron Corporation, where the convictions he won were overturned unanimously by the U.S. Supreme Court. And then we go on to his misconduct in the Mueller investigation, where he destroyed evidence that should have been available to special counsel John Durham. I'm just scratching the surface. He knew, as the general counsel of the FBI, that the Steele dossier was a fabrication paid for by Hillary Clinton. And yet he let it be used as a rationale for the appointment of Robert Mueller. So justice is coming for Mr. Weissman. One of the things that does confound me, and I'm not an attorney, of course, is that if you could theoretically, for example, charge John Brennan, the CIA director who converted to radical Islam when he was stationed as the station chief in Riyadh. He's the guy who signed the visa of 4 of the 9/11 hijackers to come to the United States. But if you could charge him, I think you would have to charge him in the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia judicial system is broken. There is not, I don't believe, one judge in this district with any integrity. They are all hyper partisan, and you could not ever get a fair jury here. So this whole idea that Trump is going to launch a campaign of retribution and revenge, first of all, I think it is unlikely. Secondly of all, they would probably be tried in D.C., where no Republican, no Trump supporter, no independent thinker could get a fair trial, but where no Democrat and no liberal will ever be convicted, no matter how overwhelming the evidence of their crime may be.
Well, Roger, and I will point out for those that want to say that Trump is going to weaponize the Justice Department, it wasn't until Trump was elected in 2019 that you had FBI agents crashing through your door. And that leads me to this question. And I don't want to put a damper on your great day, Roger, but it was under the Justice Department, under the last Trump administration, that we saw this really resurgence of these vile creatures that engineered your persecution and so many others. Is there any part of you today that feels any kind of fear of what these people will do to supporters of President Trump and people like yourself in the coming administration? Because I think your input on this for so many is so important on a day like today.
You know, Troy, the Bible teaches us to forgive those who have trespassed against us. As someone who's half Sicilian, that's a very difficult thing to do. It's probably the hardest part of being a Christian. But this is not a question for me. This is a question for Pam Bondi, who's going to be an excellent attorney general. This is a question for grand juries. We do have a system. But again, I reiterate my concern that you could never bring a successful prosecution against some of these criminals, no matter how egregious their crimes, no matter how overwhelming the evidence in the District of Columbia. So, for example, as I said earlier, Adam Schiff and his sidekick Adam Swalwell, they leaked classified documents to the media. The FBI knows this and has proof of it. They should be prosecuted. But if they stand trial in D.C., no matter how strong the evidence is, they will be acquitted, which is why I think they probably won't be prosecuted. I've always thought that the answer to this is a law that says if you're charged with a federal crime, you should go to trial in the jurisdiction in which you live, not the jurisdiction necessarily in which the prosecution is brought. But Troy, Jack Smith presented evidence to a grand jury in D.C., then took the audio recordings of that proceeding and played it for a grand jury in Florida, meaning the Florida grand jurors had no opportunity to ask questions of the witnesses before the grand jury, which is their right, in order to bring the fake documents prosecution against Donald Trump. That is unprecedented. I actually don't think it's legal. So hopefully, under Pam Bondi, no, it's not going to be vengeance. It's not about revenge or retribution. It's about rebalancing the scales of justice. The universe will always correct itself, and I think we're about to have a massive course correction. So, Troy, on this day of celebration, I want to, first of all, thank you for your great contributions here at the Stone Zone. Second of all, commend you on your own show on worldviewtube.com, which can be seen, I guess it's at 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern, just before our show at 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern. And of course, if you miss Troy and I in the Stone Zone, you can always find us by going to Rumble and sign up for the Rumble app on your cell phone. And then sign up for rumble.com/Roger Stone. You see the follow button, click it there. And of course, please set a notification so you don't miss any of the great political analysis and news. So on this day, I ask one more time for all of our audience to join me in praying for the safety and the strength and the wisdom for President Donald Trump. And lastly, I was thinking about this last night. A shout out to my good friend, Alex Jones. Alex Jones was a major contributor to what's about to happen today, which is the resurgence of America. Would not have happened without his grit and his perseverance and his commitment to telling the truth. He too has been subjected to the worst possible lawfare, yet he is still with us, still fighting, and still a warrior. Troy, until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed. And in this case, God bless America.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?